The celebrations begin. The galaxy had been at war for what seemed like an eternity. Countless star systems had been torn apart, and the Galactic Alliance had fought tooth and nail to push back humanity's once feared fleet. Now, at long last, the war was over. At least that's what they believed. It was a time for celebration. Flags waved across the Alliance's capital world, and the air was filled with the sound of cheering crowds. The Galactic Council convened in their towering palace, the seats of power packed with leaders who had seen the war through to its end. Victory had been hard won, and now it was time to savor it. The Alliance's fleet, composed of the finest warships the galaxy had ever known, stood in orbit above their capital, basking in the glow of their triumph. The war had been devastating. Every species in the galaxy had been affected, but none more than humanity. The Earth ships, once the backbone of their fleet, had vanished into the void, leaving nothing but the ghost of their past. The Alliance had done it. They had crushed Earth's last stronghold, and the human threat was no more. Counselor Erin Tuval watched the celebrations unfold through the large windows of her office. She smiled faintly. A few short years ago, humanity had been a powerful force in the galaxy. But now, Earth was silent. Its cities were forgotten, its people erased from the stars. The galaxy was at peace, or so it seemed. "I think we've earned this moment," a voice beside her said. It was General Kor, one of the senior military commanders who had led the final assault on Earth. He looked at her with a grin, his silver uniform gleaming in the light. "The human threat is gone. It's over, Erin. The war is over." Erin nodded slowly, her eyes fixed on the distant stars. "It's a strange kind of peace," she said quietly. "One that's been bought with blood. But yes, it's over. We've done it." The celebration outside continued. There were no more threats to the galaxy, no more reason to fear humanity's rise. The Dreadnoughts, the most advanced warships humanity had ever created, had been destroyed or scattered into the far reaches of space. Their power was but a distant memory now. The once feared Earth fleet had been shattered beyond recognition. But as Erin stared out into the vastness of space, she couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. It wasn't just the uneasy silence in her gut. There was something else, something she couldn't quite put her finger on. "You're lost in thought," General Kor remarked, his voice now tinged with amusement. "What is it? Still thinking about the humans? About Earth?" Erin turned to face him, her expression unreadable. "No," she said firmly, "but I can't help but wonder. What if we missed something? What if there's something we haven't accounted for?" Kor raised an eyebrow. "You're not thinking that Earth is still out there, are you?" "I don't know," Erin admitted. "I just feel like there's more to this than we realize. A part of me says that the war isn't truly over, but I suppose I'm just being paranoid." "Paranoid?" Kor laughed. "We've won. The last of the Earth fleet was defeated. Every major installation was wiped out. If anyone is paranoid, it's the humans who thought they could take us on in the first place. But we ended it. We ended it all." Erin said nothing, but her eyes narrowed, her mind still racing with unanswered questions. She had seen the battle reports, seen the destruction left behind on Earth's homeworld. And yet she couldn't shake the feeling that humanity was never fully gone. Even though they had been defeated, Earth had been left strangely quiet, almost as if it was waiting. The Galactic Council had announced the final victory, and with it, the end of humanity's threat to the galaxy. Every fleet in the Alliance had stood down, ships returned to their stations, and military personnel took leave to visit their homes or relax. The leaders celebrated, holding grand feasts and speeches about the future of peace. The galaxy had survived its darkest hour. But all the while, Erin Tuval felt an unsettling chill. Something was off, and the uneasy silence gnawed at her thoughts. She had always been cautious, always trusted her instincts, but no one else seemed to share her doubts. For now, They were content with the knowledge that Earth's defenses were nothing more than a shadow of what they once were. Back in the heart of the Alliance capital, celebrations continued. Music echoed through the streets. Dances and songs were performed in honor of the fallen heroes. The destruction of Earth was being glorified in songs and art, each piece telling the story of how the galaxy had risen from the ashes of humanity's ambition. But out there, beyond the celebrations, in the dark and quiet void of space, Earth remained. Silent, unforgiving. It was a planet that had once been teeming with life, and though the Alliance believed that the humans had been wiped from existence, Earth still held its secrets. Erin stared at the sky, her mind racing with thoughts of the past, and the strange feeling in her gut grew stronger. Somewhere, out there, beyond the borders of known space, something was waking, something that would change everything. The celebrations would go on, but a quiet tension stirred in the air, unnoticed by the jubilant masses. The war was far from over, and the true battle had just begun. As the celebrations continued on the capital world, no one noticed the subtle changes taking place far beyond the galaxy's borders. The war was over, they believed, and humanity had been vanquished, or so they thought. The truth, however, was far more complicated, and no one could have predicted what would happen next. On the edges of the galaxy, in the deep recesses of space, the Earth's silent fleet was not as dead as everyone believed. It had been dormant for centuries, hidden from the eyes of the Galactic Alliance. Humanity's deadliest warships, ancient, massive, and powerful, had been lying in wait, forgotten by the galaxy they had once terrorized. But now, after centuries of silence, those ships were stirring once again. The Dreadnoughts, the most feared of Earth's creations, had been left in the dark corners of the galaxy, their systems powered down, waiting for the right moment. And that moment had arrived. In a secluded sector, light years away from the center of galactic civilization, a massive ship flickered to life. Its engines, long dormant, hummed with ancient power. The warship's vast hull began to glow as its systems powered up, one by one. Its massive weapons systems reactivated, sending a ripple of energy across the empty void. The Dreadnoughts of Earth had awakened. Aboard the command ship, a team of human engineers who had survived the long isolation of Earth's final days, were now in full control of the warships. They had been waiting, preparing, and now it was time. The engineers knew that the galaxy believed they were gone, that the people of the Alliance thought they had erased humanity's greatest weapon. But they were wrong. Earth's fleet was still here, and it was ready to strike. In the heart of the fleet, Captain Naomi Blake, a veteran of Earth's last great battle, stood at the command console of the flagship Dreadnought. Her eyes scanned the monitors as she saw the fleet's readiness status flash across the screen. It was time. "Activate the fleet," she ordered, her voice calm but filled with purpose. "Understood, Captain," responded her second-in-command, Lieutenant Marcus Drex. He tapped a series of commands into the console. The ship shuddered slightly as its engines roared to life, its powerful propulsion systems awakening from their centuries-long slumber. The fleet, which had once been the pride of humanity, now looked like a ghost of its former self. Some ships were damaged, their hulls showing signs of age, but their power was still unmatched. They were relics of a time long past, but in the right hands, they were more than capable of striking fear into the hearts of the galaxy once again. As Captain Blake stood in silence, watching the awakening fleet, her thoughts drifted back to the day humanity had vanished from the galaxy. She remembered the defeat, the way their last stronghold had fallen. Earth had been abandoned, its people scattered and forgotten. The warships had been left behind, their weapons silent and unused, waiting for a new commander. And now she was that commander. The fleet was ready. It was time to remind the galaxy of the power they had once wielded, and the enemies who had believed humanity was gone forever. Captain Blake felt the weight of history on her shoulders as she stared at the glowing monitors in front of her. This was no longer about revenge. This was about making a statement that the galaxy would not forget. The fleet began to move, slowly at first, as if stretching its massive limbs after a long sleep. Its weapons systems powered up, scanning the surrounding space for any sign of enemy ships. But there was nothing, just the empty void. "We've been forgotten," Lieutenant Drex muttered, his voice low and filled with disbelief. "They thought we were gone. We were nothing but a myth." "They were wrong," Captain Blake replied, her voice steady. "And now they will remember." As the fleet emerged from the darkness of space, Captain Blake's mind raced with the possibilities. They had no allies, no friends in this galaxy. Only enemies. The Alliance, the very ones who had thought they had wiped Earth from existence, would soon face a force they were unprepared for. But first, they would need to make their presence known. Back at the Galactic Council, the celebrations continued. Erin Tuvell, who had been watching the celebrations with growing unease, could not shake the feeling that something was wrong. The human threat had been eradicated. The fleet had been destroyed. And yet, her instincts were telling her that there was more to this than anyone was willing to admit. She stood by the window of her office, staring out into the stars. Her gaze was distant, lost in thought, when her communication console beeped. She quickly crossed the room and activated the transmission. "Counselor Tuvell, we have an urgent report." The voice on the other end was crisp and professional. "It's Earth. There's activity. We've detected unusual energy readings coming from a sector previously thought to be abandoned." Erin's heart skipped a beat. "What kind of activity?" "We're not sure yet, but it's coming from what appears to be a fleet. A massive fleet." Her pulse quickened. The celebration, the victory, it all seemed hollow now. Was it possible? Could humanity's dreadnoughts truly have survived? Could they really be back? "Alert the fleet," she ordered, her voice sharp with authority. "Prepare for immediate action and contact the rest of the council. We need to investigate this immediately." The war, it seemed, was far from over. The galaxy had barely begun to settle into the false peace that had followed the supposed defeat of humanity. The celebrations continued across countless star systems, as races and factions congratulated themselves for what they believed was the end of a long and costly war. No one knew that on the fringes of their known space, something far more dangerous was awakening. The fleet of Earth's dreadnoughts, long forgotten, was now alive and moving. Captain Naomi Blake stood at the helm of the flagship, the Iron Titan, as its massive engines hummed with the power of the stars themselves. The ship's once dormant weapons systems had now fully powered up, each pulse of energy a reminder of the unmatched firepower the humans had once wielded. The fleet was no longer a memory, it was reality, and it was coming for the galaxy that thought it had been victorious. At the edge of the galaxy, just beyond the reach of the Galactic Alliance's sensors, the fleet began its slow, deliberate journey toward the core worlds. Captain Blake knew the time had come to make the galaxy remember what humanity had been capable of. They would not remain silent any longer. "We're approaching the edge of the neutral zone, Captain," Lieutenant Drex reported from his console. His fingers flew over the control panel, adjusting the fleet's course. The tension in the air was palpable. Everyone knew what this meant. The fleet was about to enter contested space. "Understood," Captain Blake responded, her eyes fixed on the view outside the observation window. The stars were scattered across the blackness of space, their cold, distant light offering little comfort. To her, it was a reminder of everything that had been lost, the Earth that had once been, the civilizations that had been destroyed, and the power they now held in their hands. "Captain, we're detecting ships," Drex said suddenly, his voice tinged with disbelief. "Not ours, but something big. It's just ahead." Captain Blake's eyes narrowed. "What do you mean? Are they hostile?" "We're not sure yet. Their energy signatures are unlike anything we've seen before, but they're moving toward us." Blake clenched her fists, feeling the weight of the situation settle on her shoulders. The fleet had been in isolation for centuries, and now the galaxy had changed. The powers of the Galactic Alliance, once scattered across the stars, were now unified. There were new forces, new threats. The human fleet had not been part of this new order, and yet now it was reappearing in the most dangerous of ways. "Bring us in closer. Let's see what they've got," Blake ordered. "Raise shields. We won't take any chances." The fleet maneuvered, its engines flaring as the ships shifted positions, forming a defensive perimeter around the flagship. The crew of the fleet had been trained in ancient human tactics, methods of warfare that had long been forgotten by the galaxy. They were ready for what lay ahead. The alien ships were coming into view, massive silhouettes against the backdrop of distant stars. They were unlike any ships that had been seen in the galaxy before. Sleek, black-hulled behemoths, their weapons charged and ready. Their energy readings were off the charts. Blake recognized the markings on their hulls. They were from the Galactic Alliance, the very force that had been so sure of humanity's extinction. The tension aboard the flagship was unbearable. Captain Blake could feel the weight of the moment. They had been preparing for this, but even now, the unknown stretched before them like a vast chasm. Would the galaxy remember what it had forgotten? "We're being hailed, Captain." Drex's voice broke through the silence. "Put them through," Blake said, her voice steady, though inside, her heart was pounding. A holographic projection flickered to life in front of her. It was an alien, a member of the Galactic Alliance, an Andorian, with pale blue skin and piercing yellow eyes. The officer's expression was stern, and his uniform bore the insignia of the Galactic Navy. "This is Captain Soren of the Alliance fleet," the alien said, his voice cold. "Identify yourself. You are trespassing in galactic territory." Blake's mind raced. She knew the galaxy would be shocked by their return, but she hadn't expected an immediate confrontation. The Alliance's ships were powerful, and there were many of them. They were not the same as the enemies humanity had once faced. This would not be an easy fight. "This is Captain Naomi Blake of the Earth Fleet," she replied calmly. "And we're not here to trespass. We're here to remind the galaxy of what it's forgotten." The Andorian officer's eyes narrowed. "Humanity is gone. Your kind has been wiped from existence." Blake smiled, a cold, almost sad smile. "It seems you've been misinformed." The communication was abruptly cut off, and before Blake could react, the enemy ships began to move into attack formation. The space around them shimmered as weapons systems powered up, ready to engage. "Captain, we're being targeted," Drex said urgently. "We can't outrun them. They'll open fire any second." Blake stood firm, her gaze never wavering. "Raise shields to maximum. Prepare to engage. This is our moment." The tension was unbearable as the first salvo of enemy fire came crashing toward them. Blake's orders rang out, sharp and clear, as she took command of the situation. She knew that this fight would not be like any other. Humanity had been gone for so long, but now it was back, and it would show the galaxy that it had never truly been defeated. As the first blast of energy collided with the Iron Titan's shields, Blake's resolve hardened. The war was not over. And this time, the galaxy would not make the same mistake. The silence in the command deck was deafening. Every officer, every crew member aboard the Iron Titan knew what was about to happen. The Galactic Alliance had just learned the truth. Their greatest enemy was not extinct. The humans had returned. And now, the first battle of a new war was about to begin. Captain Naomi Blake stood firm at the helm, her sharp eyes fixed on the massive fleet before them. The Alliance's warships had formed a battle line, their weapons locked onto the human dreadnoughts. They were waiting for a reason to fire. "Captain, they're charging their plasma cannons," Lieutenant Drex reported, his fingers flying across the control panel. "They're giving us one last chance to surrender." Blake smirked. "Surrender? After all they did to wipe us out? Not a chance." She turned to her weapons officer. "Are our railguns and plasma turrets online?" "Fully operational," came the reply. "All ships are ready for combat." Blake took a deep breath. This was the moment. For centuries, humanity had been a ghost, a forgotten nightmare that the galaxy had convinced itself was no longer real. But now, the nightmare had returned, and it was bringing hell with it. "Captain Soren is hailing us again," Drex said. "Let him speak," Blake ordered. The holographic image of the Andorian captain flickered to life once more. His face was filled with barely concealed fury. "Human," he spat, his yellow eyes blazing. "You do not belong in this galaxy anymore. Stand down, power down your weapons, and surrender your ships. This is your only warning." Blake crossed her arms, unfazed by the threat. "Funny. I was about to say the same thing to you." Soren's lips curled into a snarl. "You do not understand what you are up against. The Alliance rules this galaxy now. Your outdated technology will not save you." Blake leaned forward slightly, her voice like steel. "Then let's put that to the test." She made a small gesture with her hand, a silent command. In an instant, the Iron Titan fired its first shot. A railgun slug, traveling at near light speed, ripped through space and smashed into the lead Alliance battleship. The impact was devastating. The enemy ship's shields shattered like glass, and a massive explosion tore through its hull. The once proud warship was reduced to a burning wreck in seconds. The Galactic Alliance had underestimated humanity. Now, they would pay for it. The Alliance fleet reacted instantly. Bright blue energy beams lanced out from their warships, slamming into the human dreadnoughts. The shields of the Iron Titan flared under the impact, absorbing the assault, but Blake knew they wouldn't hold forever. "All ships, return fire," she commanded. The void of space became a battlefield. The human fleet moved like a well-oiled machine, their ancient but powerful dreadnoughts unleashing a storm of destruction. Plasma cannons roared, railguns fired, and missile batteries launched deadly payloads at the enemy fleet. The Alliance, caught off guard by the overwhelming firepower, struggled to maintain formation. More of their ships were hit, some were crippled, others outright destroyed. Aboard the Iron Titan, Drex shouted, "Captain, we've destroyed 3 enemy warships. Their formations are breaking." Blake's heart pounded, but she didn't celebrate yet. "Good, but we're not done." She pointed at the largest enemy vessel, a Dreadnought-class battleship, easily the size of a city. "Target their flagship. I want their admiral to know exactly who he's dealing with." The order was executed instantly. A salvo of railgun rounds streaked across space, slamming into the enemy flagship. The massive ship's shields flared and buckled, its armor cracking under the relentless assault. Then the enemy made their move. A dozen smaller ships darted forward, flanking the human fleet. They were fast, too fast for the massive dreadnoughts to track properly. Within seconds, they were weaving between the human warships, unleashing a barrage of high-energy torpedoes. Explosions rocked the Iron Titan. Warning lights flashed across the command deck. "Shields down to 70%, Drex called out. "They're trying to outmaneuver us." Blake clenched her fists. The enemy was adapting. They weren't fools. They had studied human warfare, and now they were exploiting weaknesses. But that was their mistake. They thought humanity had remained the same. "Launch the automated drone fighters," Blake ordered. The response was immediate. Hundreds of sleek, deadly eye-controlled fighter drones launched from hidden compartments on the dreadnoughts. Faster and more agile than anything the enemy had seen before, the drones tore into the attacking ships like a swarm of steel wasps. The Alliance's flankers never stood a chance. Within minutes, they were shredded, their wreckage drifting lifelessly in the void. The tide of battle was shifting. "Captain, the enemy flagship is trying to retreat," Drex reported. Blake narrowed her eyes. "Not today." She opened a direct channel to the enemy fleet. Soren's face appeared again, his once arrogant expression replaced with fear. Smoke and sparks filled his command deck. His ship was falling apart. "This is Captain Blake of the human fleet," she said coldly. "You wanted proof that humanity still exists. Consider this your reminder. Soren's face twisted in rage. This isn't over. Blake smirked. Oh, I know. She ended the transmission. Then, with a single command, the Iron Titan fired its main cannon. A beam of white-hot plasma tore through space, striking the enemy flagship directly. The ship convulsed as explosions erupted across its surface. Within seconds, it was gone. Nothing but a burning husk floating in the abyss. The battle was over. But the war had only just begun. Blake turned to her crew. We send a message to every faction in the galaxy. Let them know. Humanity has returned. A silence fell over the bridge. It was not the silence of fear. It was the silence of a legend reborn. The aftermath of the battle was nothing short of chaotic. The Iron Titan and its fleet floated in the cold silence of space, their weapons still charged and ready. The void, usually so still, now hummed with the energy of destruction. On every human ship, the crew was working fast to assess the damage and prepare for what came next. Captain Blake stood in front of the massive viewport, staring out at the wreckage. The Alliance fleet had suffered heavy losses, but humanity's victory wasn't without its own price. We've taken damage. Drex's voice cut through the stillness. It's not critical, but we'll need to dock and refit before we can continue. Blake nodded but didn't move. The sight of the burning wreckage of enemy ships still haunted her mind. It wasn't just the victory that she had to process, but the knowledge of what was coming. The galaxy had been peaceful for so long. The stories of humanity's might were long thought to be just myths. Tales whispered in dark corners of the universe, dismissed as legends. But now, those legends had come alive, and they were not going to stop. Captain, we're receiving a transmission, Drex said, his voice tinged with unease. It's from the Galactic High Council. Blake's eyes narrowed. Put it through. The image of a well-dressed alien appeared in front of her. His skin was a pale gray, and his eyes glowed faintly with an otherworldly light. He wasn't just any member of the council. He was one of the leaders, a figure who had led many of the decisions to eradicate humanity all those years ago. Captain Blake, the alien's voice was smooth, but there was an unmistakable edge of fear in his words. I hope this message finds you well. I speak for the Galactic High Council. Blake didn't speak. She simply let the silence stretch, letting him feel the weight of her presence. The alien cleared his throat. We wish to negotiate. Blake's lips curled into a faint smile, but her eyes stayed cold. Negotiate. Yes, we acknowledge your power, and we understand the grave mistake we made. The alien continued, his eyes flickering nervously. We are prepared to offer you terms for peace. You will have a seat at the table, and your people will be given a voice in the galaxy's future. Blake tilted her head, considering the offer. She had to admit, the council's sudden change in tone was surprising, but it didn't fool her. These were the same people who had tried to wipe humanity off the map. They wanted peace because they were afraid. And what do you think we want? Blake asked, her voice steady and calm. The alien hesitated before answering. We simply want to avoid further bloodshed. The Alliance is strong, but we have no desire to wage a galaxy-wide war. We understand now that we were wrong. Humanity is not a species to be underestimated. Blake's mind raced. The offer was tempting. The Alliance had been built on power and control, and a place in the galaxy's government would put humanity in a position of influence. But peace at what cost? Surrendering to those who had destroyed Earth once before. I'll give you a counteroffer, Blake said, her voice icy. You stay out of our way, and humanity will do the same. No more wars, no more interference. But do not mistake this for forgiveness. We've already proven we can wipe you out. The next time we meet, it won't be as a negotiation. The alien's expression faltered. Captain, you don't understand. No, Blake cut him off. You don't understand. You thought you could erase us. You thought we were gone. But humanity is back, and we're stronger than ever. If you want to avoid total destruction, I suggest you learn to live with that fact." The alien was silent for a long moment. "We will relay your message to the council," he said finally, his voice strained. We hope you'll reconsider." Blake turned off the transmission before he could say anything else. "Captain," Drex's voice broke the silence once more. "Do you think they'll listen?" Blake looked at the debris scattered across space, a grim expression on her face. "I don't know, but it won't matter. Humanity is no longer a footnote in galactic history. We're here to stay, and no one can change that." She paused for a moment, thinking, "But we won't just let them go unpunished. If the galaxy thinks it can ignore us, it will regret it." The decision had been made. The galaxy had just witnessed the return of humanity, and it had a choice to make: accept humanity as an equal or face their wrath. Either way, the future had changed forever. The human fleet began to move again, leaving the wreckage of the battle behind. Each ship, each dreadnought, carried the weight of their past, of Earth, of the fallen. But now, the future was wide open, and humanity's destiny was no longer a question. The war for the galaxy had just begun, and they would fight with everything they had. Blake's final words echoed in her mind as she walked from the command deck to her quarters. "We won't just survive. We will conquer." And with that, she knew there would be no turning back. The galaxy would soon know the true power of humanity. The war had only just begun, and no one was safe from the storm that was coming. Blake's smile deepened, her eyes cold as ice. "That's where you're wrong," she said softly. "We've already taken on the entire galaxy. And we've won." She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. "You've seen our power. You've felt it. And now you will respect it." The transmission cut off, and Blake turned to face her crew. They had heard everything. There was no going back now. The decision was made. Humanity would not be bullied. Humanity would not be forgotten. "Set course for the galactic core," Blake ordered, her voice unwavering. "We're taking what's ours, and no one will stand in our way." The crew moved swiftly, working in unison as they prepared the Iron Titan and the rest of the fleet for what was to come. The galaxy had misjudged humanity, underestimated them. But now, they would see the true might of Earth's forces. Humanity had spent centuries in silence, but that silence was over. And as the fleet surged forward into the darkness of space, Captain Blake knew that the galaxy was in for a rude awakening. There was no more room for negotiation. There was no more room for peace. The war had started, and this time, humanity was in control. The Iron Titan led the fleet forward, its massive silhouette cutting through the dark expanse of space like a harbinger of doom. The stars twinkled in the distance, unaware of the storm brewing on the horizon. Captain Blake stood at the bridge, her gaze fixed on the path ahead. This was it. This was the moment they had all been waiting for, and there was no turning back. The fleet was silent, its ships poised and ready, each vessel a testament to humanity's resolve and strength. They had spent years preparing for this, and now the time had come to show the galaxy that Earth's might was undeniable. The battle would not be fought with words or treaties. It would be fought with fire, iron, and unwavering determination. Blake's thoughts were interrupted as Lieutenant Drex approached, his voice filled with urgency. "Captain, we've detected enemy forces near the galactic core. They've begun to mobilize in response to our approach. It's a large fleet, larger than we expected." Blake didn't flinch. The enemy's response was predictable, but it wasn't enough. "What's their status?" she asked. "They're gathering their forces at the outer rim of the core," Drex replied. "They're trying to form a defensive line, but they're scattered. They won't be able to organize in time." "Good," Blake said, her voice cold and confident. "Let's make sure they don't get the chance." She turned back to the viewports, her mind focused on the task ahead. The galaxy had underestimated humanity's resolve, and now it would pay the price. The Iron Titan and its fleet would show them that Earth's wrath was not to be taken lightly. The days of peaceful coexistence were over. Humanity had learned from the past and had now become a force too powerful to ignore. As the fleet neared the galactic core, the first signs of resistance appeared. A series of alien ships, once thought to be invincible, appeared on the scanners, their weapon systems powered up and ready for battle. The fleets of the Galactic Council were finally ready to defend their position, but humanity had the advantage. Blake felt the surge of adrenaline course through her veins. This was the final test, the final moment of reckoning. The time for negotiation had passed. Now, they would fight. "Open fire," Blake commanded, her voice cutting through the tense silence of the bridge. Immediately, the Iron Titan's cannons fired, releasing a barrage of energy bolts that tore through the enemy ships like paper. The first wave of enemy forces was obliterated in seconds, but the fight wasn't over. More alien ships poured into the area, their weapons flashing in the darkness as they attempted to retaliate. But it was too late. Humanity had come prepared. The Iron Titan unleashed its full might, the advanced weaponry of the Earth fleet proving to be far superior to anything the Galactic Council could muster. The alien ships that tried to form a defense were quickly overpowered, their shields disintegrating under the sheer force of humanity's firepower. "Enemy ships in retreat," Drex reported, his voice filled with awe. "They can't keep up with us. We're pushing them back." Blake's lips curled into a smile. The battle was unfolding just as she had planned. But she knew this was only the beginning. The rest of the galaxy had yet to see the full might of Earth's fleet. The Galactic Council would fall, and they would learn the hard way that humanity was not to be underestimated. "Continue the assault," Blake ordered. "We don't stop until we've secured the core." As the Iron Titan advanced further into the heart of the galactic core, Blake could see the remaining enemy ships desperately trying to regroup. But it was clear that the tide of battle had shifted. The galaxy had thought humanity weak. They had thought the war was over. But they were wrong. Now, the galaxy would feel the wrath of Earth. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the High Council of the Galactic Union was in chaos. The transmission from Captain Blake had sent shockwaves through their ranks. The fleets they had relied on for centuries were failing. The legendary Earth fleet, long thought to be a myth, had reappeared in full force, and the galaxy was in a state of panic. "We have underestimated them," the High Council leader said, his voice filled with disbelief. "We cannot stop them. The Iron Titan is unstoppable." A murmur of agreement swept through the council chamber. The once mighty galactic powers were now facing a new reality, a reality in which humanity had proven itself to be the dominant force in the galaxy. The balance of power had shifted. The leader of the Galactic Union slammed his fist onto the table. "We cannot allow this to continue. We must act now, or it will be too late." But it was too late. The damage had already been done. Humanity had already proven that it would no longer be silenced, no longer be ruled. The fleets that had once ruled the galaxy were now in retreat, their forces scattered before Earth's relentless onslaught. Back on the bridge of the Iron Titan, Blake watched the destruction unfold, her face a mask of determination. The war was far from over, but they had made their mark. The galaxy had heard humanity's message loud and clear. Earth was no longer a forgotten world, a weak species to be conquered. Humanity had emerged from the silence of centuries, and now they were here to stay. "Continue the pursuit," Blake said firmly. "We show no mercy. We don't stop until every last one of them understands who we are." As the Iron Titan led the fleet deeper into the heart of the galaxy, Blake's heart swelled with pride. This was the beginning of a new era for humanity, one where they were no longer silent, no longer on the sidelines of the galaxy. They had arrived, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The time for mercy had ended. The reckoning had begun.